My name's Max. I'm in St. Louis. My pronouns are he, him, his, they, them, theirs, and I am a cycling instructor.
Where can people find you, Max?
People can find me at King Maxi, no I, with a Y on Instagram. That's pretty much the only place you can find me.
Okay. I'm Dan. I use he, him, his, they, them, their pronouns. I'm originally from Philadelphia, but I'm in San Diego, California. You can find me on Instagram at transcend the binary underscore. That's pretty much my only social other than my Facebook, which I use for my family to see pictures of me. And I'm a tenants rights attorney.
Yes. Okay. So my name is Lex. I use they them pronouns, and I am a queer, non-binary, trans-masculine Jewish human with big femme energy. And I'm located in Philadelphia. And I am an LGBTQ plus educator, activist, model, and mental health advocate. And you can find me on, let's see, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Lex, Lex underscore Horwitz, Horwitz, 10, folx, 10. That always gets messed up. And I also am on Facebook at Mix Lex Horwitz. I also have a website that has a bunch of free resources and community programs, which is my name, lexhorwitz.com. And just happy creating community as well.
Thank you. And I'll wrap us up. My name is Kaiden Blü. I use they, them pronouns. I identify as non-binary trans-masculine. I am just happy to be here today to share community, and you guys can find me on Instagram, kaiden.blue, BLU, or thrivewithpride.com.
I didn't realize like how much I needed to be immersed in a transgender queer expansive space just to see all of us there and like sharing experiences, like sharing self-care tips, just even with so many of the folks like not even having their video on, but like knowing that there are people here who are here for a reason.
Yeah.
And that we're a part of the conversation is just so beautiful.
I feel like as an educator and now as a GLSEN board member, like we have GSAs for youth, but we don't have community groups really for adults that are needing community so desperately. I'm so wanting connection. And I feel like this space provides that kind of moment of like levity, affirmation, and then it allows us just to kind of build that almost like a congregation, if you may, of like that collective energy of like, hey, we're in this together.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think it's so hard to meet friends as an adult, particularly if you don't drink and party, which I don't because I'm old and I go to bed at like 10 o'clock. So it's very,
Did anyone have any aha moments about their gender identity or their expression or something they've learned or any takeaways from this?
I'll get back to you. I need to process.
That's fair.
That's great.
I realized that I was relating to a lot of the just like the ways of like the way that things were articulated just kind of like provided maybe like an added lens and added perspective, or like even maybe like clearer words that I can just like understand myself. So like the question of like, well, when do you like what are the spaces where you don't notice your gender? I had to be like, huh, great question. Let me think about like what does that mean, and like based off of what standards or based off of what environment. So yeah, it's all, like things that I'm also actively have been questioning and thinking about, especially when I'm trying to limit, like I believe Dan, you said this, limiting the environments that we put ourselves in when we know that it may not be affirming or it may not be a comfortable or safe environment. And like I'm doing like a lot of like self work and trying to figure out like how do I like identify those environments? How do I protect myself? or like put myself in better environments. It's just like a lot of like the self-talk, a lot of like the processing that I've been doing about, well, what does it feel like when I'm in a family space or like an extended family space versus when I am with my sister who I've been myself with my entire life. I critical thought, my friends, my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There was like some questions in there that I had to think about.
Yeah, what were those for you, Dan? Or what was the question that was kind of like, wait a second?
The safety one and like affirming, definitely. I didn't think about, I guess like other people say that I am typically the only trans person in a room when I go somewhere. So I don't have conversations that make me think about it on more than a surface level. Like I'm used to being like the gender guy, so to speak. So to be honest, I didn't even really look at the questions too much before tonight because I'm like, I don't need to prepare for this. Like there's not like it's all things that I can just say, I can say. So that was definitely good. And I thought that the questions were good in the fact that they didn't reduce the experience to a certain paradigm, and it wasn't like the medicalization and sort of questions that we so often get when it's an audience that's a cis audience or audience that's not living the experience, so to speak.
I think that's what's magical about this space is like we get to talk to people that get it. We get to ask questions that like when Max and I sat down and like did this, we were basically like interviewing each other and like, how have you had this experience? How do you feel about this? And like we kind of came together on these like three like major topics when we were reflecting on like fluidity of gender and gender fluidity. And like we defined it together, we separated it, we segmented gender. And we put a lot of thought into like how do you interview a trans person in a very diverse trans community that one wants information, wants to engage with information, and is trying to figure out who the hell they are in this world that's telling them, no, you're not that.
And I think like something that I'm trying to be really aware of, and like the question that was like sort of what makes you feel like empowered in your gender, or like I'm trying to ask like really grounding questions, because I think like most of us spend our whole fucking lives being like disembodied, and we're just like our minds are just like floating around on overdrive trying to figure out like where we fit and like where we live in this existence. And then like so just like being asked things like, you know, how do you respond in this like present moment, like in the moment of being misgendered, like even though that's like a painful thing, it's like a grounding question. Or like I loved Lex your example of finding a hallway in your space and just like strutting down it and like giving yourself permission to feel powerful and seen even by yourself. Like I remember like when you were saying that, I was like, oh my gosh, I remember feeling shy to even do masculine things like with myself when I was like little and stuff, you know, like I would sort of like, you know, puff up my chest in the mirror or just, you know, masculine shit. I would like try it on when I was by myself, but I like felt like it felt scary for me. Like it felt like, you know, so even just sort of like encouraging trans people, it's like, no, like take up space, especially when you're with yourself. Like give yourself permission. It feels a little like weird and scary sometimes, but it's also just like so important because we just spend so much time like in our heads as trans people, I think. And so I really want to prioritize like, you know, us just at least having some of the questions be really like, okay, in this moment, like, okay, like feel yourself breathing, like you were alive, like this is amazing, you know, just sort of these are our bodies, like things like that. Um so yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't considered I mean, it's very obvious. It's hard not to, but like talking to cis people about being trans is very different. Feels very different than talking to trans and gender nonconforming people about being trans and gender nonconforming or gender expansive. Um, yeah.
Is there any questions that we didn't ask that we should have asked, or that you guys were like, oh, maybe hopefully they'll ask us that, or hopefully we can engage in this topic in regards to the fluidity of gender?
I mean, oh my gosh, I feel like with any of these topics, I could talk for until I am placed in my grave. Like, like I will always have something to say about it. So I really think that the conversations like flowed so naturally and like hit all of the like biggest like the I guess like general like big umbrella kind of questions. And if there's like a follow-up conversation or like a desire for that, like something that I think could be really, I guess, like neat, maybe even like affirming, could be like talking about how when we like first came to our identities, what like terms we used, what our expression looked like, maybe even like what if our sexuality had changed, and then like with more time or with new environments or updated, more affirming language, like how we have progressed to where we like currently are. Because like I know like for me there it was not linear at all. There were I just experienced, like I know I said it like a little bit when we were talking, I knew I was transmasculine and I felt like I had to yet again prove myself as a masculine person. And like what did that look like what did I have to do to box myself back in to be finally externally validated for something I internally already knew was correct. And then when I finally was externally validated as a masculine person, incorrectly as a man, but nonetheless, like they think I'm a man, I say, you're affirming my masculinity. So great, you see I'm masculine, bitch, pop out the femininity. Like everything changed. Everything changed when I finally people read me as masculine. Okay, the hair is getting longer. Like we're like things can now be experienced differently because of like the comfort and the safety of navigating time and space differently and like having those like new experiences and processing and self-work and self-love and just I honestly think that the narrative of there's like a roadmap to being trans, like if you're assigned this at birth, then you go to that. It may work for some binary trans folks. And even if there are binary trans folks, it's likely still harming them because that doesn't mean that they can't be the other expression or attracted to someone who like, just
Right.
the like the roadmap idea is so flawed. And I feel like they're having a conversation about like, hey, I had this misconception and this is what happened, but then this beautiful thing happened where this femininity just exploded out of my body once I got top surgery. Like, I wonder if other folks are having that experience too, because I felt like I was getting a little bit of that from y'all as well.
I think that's going to be an excellent follow-up conversation.
Yeah, I have that. I have that on 10.
Again, thank you, Max. Thank you, Lex. Thank you, Dan, for joining us today. You guys rock. This has been so much fun. I hope it was good for you as it was good for us, for me, and this community. So thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Bye, guys.
Bye.